Your girl, Marky Livens Ryle, and today I can't call him a sidekick because he's so much more than that. But he is my podcast co-host and producer. I want to bow down to him because he's actually changed my life this year and made me get up off the pot. You know, they said you need to poop or get up off the pot. And so, Mr. Matt Johnson, what's going on today?
Hey, Marky, I'm so pumped to be here.
I'm glad to hear that. You know what? You did change my life. And there are a couple of things that are manifesting right now simply because of you. So I am elated to have you in my life. But more importantly, today I'm elated that you were willing to come and share with my audience. I've been telling everybody, right, how one, they should use video, but more importantly, how podcasting has changed people's perception of me. When
Yeah.
we look at the fact that we're close to 1.4 million realtor members globally, and they're coming into this business in droves. Let's say that I'm fresh with a license in my hand and I
Mhm.
just became a realtor member. I've been preaching on my soapbox about what I think people should do.
Mhm.
But what do you think that real estate professionals should do today in order to garnish attention online?
That is a great question. And if I've thought about this a lot from talking to a lot of really smart people. And if I were starting over in real estate today, I would go all in on Facebook Live.
Really?
Yeah, and I think later on, what's funny, people forget this about my background, but I started doing, I didn't get into podcasting per se. I got into doing live video on Google Hangouts, and then like 3 or 4 months into it, my co-host said, "Hey, we should change this to a podcast." And so my first podcast was always live, first on YouTube, then it was live on Facebook. We were one of the very first people to experiment with Smile Time, which is like the very first platform that got a Facebook Live integration. And then we moved over to the others like Blue Jeans and Zoom that people are more familiar with now. So we were one of the earliest to experiment with Facebook Live, but I've always done live video. That's what I would say drove the early growth of our show. And then being on a platform like YouTube, gave people the opportunity to find us and stumble across us when they were looking for content that we were talking about that they cared about, stuff that they were searching for. So yeah, like if I were an agent, I would go all in on Facebook Live first, use that as an excuse to start building relationships, and we can talk about that in a second. But yeah, I would go in on Facebook Live first, and then at some point turn that series of Facebook Lives, kind of like what we did with your show. You were already active on Facebook Live, and then you start taking those conversations and you wrap them up later into a show, whatever that means, right? It could be locally focused about what's going on in your area. It could be about something that you're passionate about. There's a lot of different ways to spin it, but I would start on Facebook Live first and then maybe turn it into a show later.
Wow. Now, you know what? I did not anticipate you were going to say Facebook Live. I utilized a number when I was speaking at Inman back in January, and it's the fact that they say that a picture's worth 1,000 words. Well, someone came up with a mathematical calculation that 1 minute of video content is worth 1.8 million words.
Wow.
When you think about the value, and you talked about building relationships, how
Mhm.
does one leverage live streaming video into building relationships online?
Well, I think we overlook this. I think most agents expect, or hope, I should say, most agents hope that it works like this. I put out a lot of content online. People reach out to me and ask me to talk about listing their home or buying a home. And what we find is that we're missing a step in there. And the step is the person isn't going to reach out to us. They're waiting for us to reach out to them, and they'll have a conversation with us if we kick it off. And so the way that I look at social media is as the conversation starter, not us just throwing content out there into the wind and expecting it to come back in the form of sales in our pocket. So when I think about social media, I think of like a podcast, or excuse me, as a Facebook Live, as an opportunity to start having a conversation with people that I'm connected to on Facebook. And then I want to actually see, A, who's watching my videos, B, who's commenting, and I want to respond to all those comments. And I want to then reach out for anybody that I could see that watched the video that maybe they didn't comment or whatever. If I didn't respond to them directly and start a conversation in the comment feed on the Facebook Live video, I want to send them a message. Better yet, Facebook Messenger gives us the ability to send a voice message, which is awesome, right? So I've been doing that to more people, and I've also noticed that people are starting to do it to me, and people love it. It's amazing. You don't have to look good, like, you don't have to get dolled up, right? You can just literally like set 10 minutes aside. You can look back at who watched and commented on your Facebook Live video, and you can just pick up your phone and record a quick voice message, 15, 20 seconds to all those people, and just say, hey, I saw that you checked out my Facebook Live. I was giving like a little market update on what's going on here on the west side of Chicago. Let me know. I don't know if you're curious or if why real estate might be on your mind right now, but I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you have any questions, let me know.
Wow. Now, you know what? I had Annette Anthony on one of the episodes, and she talked about the power of sending a audio message via Messenger. Mm-hmm. But everything you just stated is something that the founder of Facebook has talked about, and that's the fact that this year is going to be about still live video and the power of Messenger. And I'm glad that you gave the steps that one could take in order to see better results, right? To build that relationship, to get in the look, it's going down in the DM. What was kind of funny, we had Dr. E.T. Eric Thomas the other day for a remarkable conference here in Chicago. And he was talking about his daughter. She's a millennial. He says, instead of her sending him a text message, she actually goes and sends him a DM. He said, and he wanted to correct her, like, look, you got my phone number, just send me a text, right? But she prefers to send messages to him via Instagram. And so the beauty of this.
She slides into her dad's DMs.
Yeah, she slides into her dad's DM.
That's such a weird phrase, slide into your DMs. Yeah, that's odd. That's unusual, right? So so he's going to get on her, and then he realized just let her do her thing.
He said, allow her to communicate with him the way that she wants to communicate, because he did not feel as though he had a close relationship with her as he did his son. And he says because he did a disc analysis and realized that I think she might be a high C and he's a high I. And so he wants to kind of talk her love language. And apparently the DM is her love language. But now that I think about this, my son is 23 and he stays in my DM. I mean, stays in the DM. And my cousin, who's about 7 years younger than me, he lives on the East Coast. He's forever sending me something via DM. And you think these are people who have the phone that still, like, I got a phone that still rings in my house, right? So they could call the house number. That's not what they're doing.
No, it's funny you mentioned that, because actually my dad does the same thing. And partially in that case, it's convenience. Right. Yeah, I know. Like everybody's parents are on Facebook now. But legitimately, like, as opposed to sending me a, hey, how are you? He'll send me some article or a video. And then a lot of times he'll include my brother-in-law in it. So we have different like Facebook conversations going with different small groups of the family. And of course I live 1,000 miles away from my family. So to me, that's great. My dad and I will text individually one-on-one, but then we'll use things like Facebook Messenger, because you can send things that start conversations that aren't just a text. They're a video, they're a link, there's something funny you came across, and it's a little touch point. And I think we overlook the ability to use that for real estate, because we think if it's not a real estate conversation, it's not of value. And it's just not true, especially when it comes to like the highest value people in our database. Like, let's say we mark out the top 150 people that we want to communicate with, because there are friends, there are advocates, there are champions, there's the people that are most likely to give us referrals. We should be looking for opportunities to have conversations with them that have absolutely nothing to do with real estate, because that's where that personal relationship is built. That's why they'll send us referrals. Now, we also have to be good at what we do, and we have to make it easy for them to refer us by, hopefully specializing in something, and, all those things are helpful. But even if you didn't do any of those things, but all you did is have regular non-real estate conversations with the top 150 people in your database, you'd probably have more business than you knew what to do with.
Oh, I need to get a little bit more strategic, because I'm communicating with too many people. I got to go back and look at this list and narrow it down to 150 people. So we're going to do a Facebook Live. We're then going to build relationships by basically sliding into the DM, but utilizing Messenger to send an audio voice. But before we really even start some of this stuff, we need to look at that 150 people. And I go back to, actually, we talked about this before, setting your SMART goals, right? Being specific, measurable, obtainable, relevant, and time bound with those core group of people who can actually send you referral business. Oh, that sounds simple.
Yeah, let me give you a couple of quick tips that might be helpful. So there's two different tools that I think can make this easier, because one of the hardest parts about just having that approach and kind of narrowing down who you want to communicate with is just how do you keep track of who those people are. There's a couple of things there's one that I use regularly, and there's one that I have experimented with that looks very promising that I'm going to shift to. So number one is there's a project management tool called Trello, Trello. My entire business runs on Trello, so I'm always tinkering with it for different things. One of the things that I did is I built a board called Relationships, and it has most of, I would say, the key relationships in my industry, my space, potential clients, people that I want to be friends with, just all that stuff. Basically, I dumped all of their names, and they each have a little card, but that card allows me to put their picture there too. So I'll look at that relationship board, and it's a memory jogger, not just to reach out and connect with them or send them a send out card or whatever, but it also spurs me to go, I was meaning to introduce that person to so-and-so, and it'll remind me to make key introductions, or it'll remind me to send them a thank you card or whatever. So that will help. So basically take, a couple of hours, build a little Trello board or something like that, where you can throw all of your 100 people that you want to keep in touch with. And then you can have, over time, you just start adding their picture into their cards. And that creates this visual, almost like a vision board of people that you want to stay in touch with. The other tool is called Cloze, Cloze. And that's a little app. Lives on your phone, but it also syncs up across other devices. And I think the main thing that jumped out to me about that is that it integrates with your Gmail, for example, or your Outlook, and it actually serves up who you talk to the most. And so kind of uses AI to analyze how you're actually communicating and who you're communicating with the most often. And then if you haven't reached out to that person in a week or two, it'll remind you, right? So I'm like, wow, that's insanely cool. So depending on how you use your email, and I think it also integrates with social platforms like Facebook. And so it can actually remind you. I think you can actually set who you feel like is important to keep in touch with. And then if it's been a week or two since you reached out to them, it'll remind you to reach out. So it serves up a list of maybe 5 to 10 people every day. And it just kind of pokes you, reminds you, hey, you should reach out to these people.
Oh, I love that. So Trello, which I have it, I don't utilize it enough. And so I'm seeing how to go back and take a couple of hours to build that board out. Cloze, I'm going to download that. And you mentioned another thing, send out cards. And one thing that I do, and I actually keep these, is I have all sorts of little cards already crafted over here, because I always send out some type of card, thank you notes. I get them from any place I go. I got cards, right? That you should get into their mailbox, because it isn't as much competition in the mailbox as it once was.
Yeah, it's insanely cool. And the cool thing that I like about send out cards that one of my friends, Gail Zentek, does to me on a consistent basis, and I've done this to other people. Well, I'll tell you a quick story. So, can you have a card from Gail?
Who did this come from?
Course. There you go.
Other than Gail.
That's hilarious. And of course, but that's the point, is sitting on your shelf, because so one of the cool things about send out cards, and not that it's an endorsement for them, although I do love them, but it's the combination of old school and new school, right? So you can take send out cards, and instead of sending them a general thank you card, you can pull down something from online, like any picture, for example, something from their social media. So there was a great, there's a great gal, her name is Janine. She's a real estate coach down in Florida. She's been on my show. I love her to death. And I wanted to send her just a card to let her know I was thinking about her, and to thank her for being awesome. So I went to her Facebook page, and I noticed that she's got a few pictures that she's taken of orchids that she's growing in her garden. And you could tell, like, it's the background of her Facebook profile. There's a few pictures scattered throughout like this. I could tell this is something that she really cares about and was proud about. So I grabbed that photo from Facebook, went over to send out cards, threw it on the front of the card, and then send her a nice note on the inside. She loved it so much, she talked about it on a Facebook Live and specifically called me out, tagged me in it, and told me how much she appreciated it and loved that card. And so it took something that was not only a combination of old school and new school, but it also gave her something to talk about on social media. So I didn't intend it this way, but there was like 3 forms of benefit I got out of doing something simple. And to me, that's where I see the most opportunity for social media and social selling. It's in the relationship side. It's using social media to just build real relationships with people.
Wow. And you know what? It's funny because I was just in Kalamazoo.
Okay.
Gail took this picture of me at my computer because this is my background, everything.
Okay.
And a week so later, my husband's like, who sent you a box, right? And I come home and I have a gift and I'm like, oh, she is so freaking awesome. So now she's being mentioned on the podcast, right? Because she's done a fabulous job of building relationships.
Yes, exactly. She is a master at it. I aspire to be. I'm like, I'm good at building relationships in other areas, but the cards are not as good. Yeah, so I think to me, there's so many fun ways to, like, it's that middle gap, you know, like we can talk about content and we could talk a little bit about like what to say on Facebook Lives and stuff like that. But I think the biggest thing that I notice with agents is that we want the numbers. So we want our Facebook Lives to get 1,000, 2,000 views in order to feel like it's worth it. I want to flip that on its head a little bit. So if you're doing like a market update about the west side of Chicago or a certain subdivision or something like that you want to really dominate, if you have 1,000 people that watch that and you get 100 comments on the video, you can't follow up with those. Like it ends up being overwhelming. It ends up being white noise. If you have 20 people that watch that video or you get 10 comments on that video, you can follow up with every single one of them with a personal message. That's more effective than getting 1,000 views on it. And I think that's the mentality that needs to shift. It's not that we need everybody to be watching, although it doesn't hurt. The question is, if there's so many people watching, especially a market update, that means their mind is on real estate for some reason. Most people don't care about real estate in those 5 years where they're settled and they're not thinking about making a move. You know, so if they're watching a market update, something's on their mind. Either they're making a move or somebody in their life is making a move, so real estate's on their mind. So you'd want to be able to start a real conversation with them. And if there's 1,000, 2,000 views and comments and all this stuff, it ends up paralyzing people and you move on and you just do another video. And there's just no conversations that come out of that. One of the other things I learned from one of my clients, I think you've been on her show, Dana Malstaff, Boss Mom, is
Boss Mom.
she taught me how to reactivate and keep a video kind of popping up at the top of people's feeds. So a lot of times people, when they decide, okay, I'm gonna get more engaged, I'm going to start having conversations with people, and they'll do a Facebook Live and they'll get a few comments and they'll go and they'll respond to everything all at once. Do one at a time. Every time that you go back and like someone's comment and reply and stuff like that, and then you leave the rest alone and come back to them later, every time you comment, it keeps on putting more engagement on that same video, and Facebook keeps moving it up and up and up and showing it to more people. So it's a great, just super simple way to take what you're already doing and just make it more effective. Is just like, if you're going to reply to comments, don't reply to all of them at once, just spread it out a little bit.
That's good. And come back strategically throughout the day. It kind of, you know what? I don't think the algorithm is set up like this, but it's kind of like with your stories, right? You keep adding a little bit to the story to remain relevant. So it's pushed farther to the left-hand side because it has the most recent content. Basically going to treat a feed post like a story.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what it is.
I like
which I hadn't thought
idea.
about that with the stories either, but that's smart.
Reactivate. Okay, I'm gonna have to go look. I'm gonna have to change up how I'm responding. What I've noticed probably in the last 2 weeks, the things that do get the most comments on it, I haven't been responding to them all at once, and it could be 3-4 days later, and someone will comment on it when I thought they should have commented 3-4 days ago. I respond, and it's kind of like keeping it in the feed longer. So definitely.
It's got to be. Yeah. Because otherwise, unless they were scrolling way down, you wouldn't think that a video from 3 or 4 days ago would pop up in their feed at all. But Facebook must be looking at that going, well, people are still commenting on it, so I'm going to show it to some more people. So the more we do that, the better. And the cool thing is if you start, like, that works especially well if you start having ongoing conversations in the comments of your live videos. So, I mean, there's so many benefits if you take the next step and you take your Facebook Lives and use them as a way to start conversations with people, because that's when they go, I really been thinking about something. You should come on over. I check out my house. I got some things to fix up in the garage, and I'm not sure if it's really ready to sell. Well, great. Like those conversations, they just, most people are not going to reach out and ask you that out of the clear blue sky. But if you're in a conversation and you start to get them talking and you ask why real estate's been on their mind lately, they'll open up and you can turn that into an appointment. And that's the goal. Like if the stuff we do on social media doesn't turn into appointments, it doesn't do us any good. We're being social, but not selling.
I got you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good information. What are some tips you want to give to people in closing? Because I could see how I've laid out a whole new plan to what I've already been doing. So you got me going back and tweaking some things, which is always a good thing. Tweak to perfection.
Yep.
Well, with saying that, a lot of times people are hung up on how they look or they want it to be perfect. And I think we probably both operate out of 80% is great and we tweak it to perfection. But what are some other tips that you would want to give to people today?
Well, when it comes to Facebook Live, audio is king. So if you think you don't look the greatest, just realize that nobody cares and everybody already knows what you look like. So yes, you've got your headset on. I've got a good microphone, but it's actually really, really simple. So if you've got an iPhone, at least before the newest version came out, the iPhone earbuds with the little microphone here on the earbuds work really, really well. If you have a newer iPhone, you can buy an adapter and then just plug in an external microphone. The Rode Smart Lav, so Smart L-A-V as in Victor, Smart Lav is a really good microphone. It clips onto your shirt, kind of like what you'd see somebody wear on an interview on local TV. And it's I think it's like $60, something ridiculously cheap, 60 or $70, and it plugs into your phone so you get good audio. And even if all you did, and I'll give you a few types of live video content to think about. We talked about market updates. Another really drop dead easy one to do is buyer and seller questions. So these are the questions that people are asking you anyway. Answer them on a Facebook Live instead of just behind the scenes. And then just talk about what's going on in the community. Whatever part of the community you're active about, whatever part of the community you care about. If you're super into nonprofits, talk about nonprofits. If you're super into wine, talk about the wine stores, the liquor stores, the wine bars, interview a sommelier, whatever. That kind of stuff, that's what people will eat up in between when they care about real estate. And they'll build a connection to you and they'll keep in communication with you because you're talking about the things that they care about. And then when they start caring about real estate, that's when they'll start watching your market updates. That's when they'll start watching your buyer and seller questions. And that's like the tripwire. It's like, oh, now I know you're thinking about real estate. Now let's have a conversation. So that's how that progression should go if we're using social media to sell.
Oh, excellent. I love that. One thing I haven't done a good job and I need to do more is community. At one point, I was the Baroness of Hyde Park on Yelp, and I had a little competition going on with two men on Yelp and Foursquare back in the day. And so I was talking all about the community. I need to get probably reacclimated or more in tune with the community because a lot of these communities have great ongoing events that as real estate professionals, we can highlight.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, there's always fun things going around in the community, and that's what people care about because it's what's going on in their area. And you just got to show them that you care about it too.
Well, you know what? You definitely have to show them that you care because that's what people want. And you need to be authentic and transparent in that, Karen. I tell people, people are watching you under a magnifying glass and perception is reality. So you can't fake this stuff. You got to really be about it because they're looking at you. And I look at people too, so I know what's going on sometimes without people ever telling you what's going on. But people want to believe that you care about the community. Last year, I started doing more things in Chicago, and it didn't take a long time for me to get just totally reacclimated to the community, just walking the streets, stopping by the cupcake shop, stopping by, the favorite Yelp restaurants in the community, and then just letting people see you and talking to people. And I talk to everybody, but it seems like today, I talk to everybody.
Yeah, believe it.
Selfies are the big thing. I mean, people say, oh, I'll take your picture. We like, no, get out the way. We want to do a selfie. And tagging yourself and other people in those photos and then in those videos.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
very, very easy stuff to do. And as long as you're talking about stuff that people care about, like I'd rather see people do that than do a lot of the behind the scenes lifestyle stuff. I think agents get, because we all follow like Gary Vaynerchuk, for example. So Gary V talks a lot about, kind of pulling back the curtain. And I think that's true to an extent, but you got to remember, Gary Vee's selling to other entrepreneurs. He's selling a lifestyle to other people who want to be him. Our customers don't necessarily want to be us. So the way that we pull back the curtain on our lives is a little bit different from what Gary Vee is doing, right? Because we're pulling back the curtain like on things that our clients don't want to necessarily know about. They hire us because they want somebody to take the mental and emotional burden of this incredibly stressful transaction off of their plate. They don't want to necessarily know all the stuff that we do behind the scenes for them. They want to know that we care about the same stuff that they care about. And that's why it's so good to talk about community events or nonprofits or wine or whatever, that like whatever you want to share in common with people, spend more time talking about that. And if you're going to go through your day and kind of pull back the curtain on stuff, pull back the curtain on fun stuff. Right? Not, hey, I had an inspector not show up. You know what I'm saying? Like that kind of stuff, like there's only a certain amount that people care about that. They care about the stuff that's going on in their community, the stuff that's relevant to their life right now. Let's pull back the curtain and show the day in the life when it's stuff like that. And I think people will care more about us being active on social media.
Oh, I agree 100%. Well, you've given me some homework. I always have homework every single time I talk to you, but it's good homework because it makes me better. It's actually going to make our audience better. And I've been preaching Facebook Live for quite some time. I know that you already gave me another homework assignment, so I'm going to be more consistent again in doing my Facebook Live videos because I've kind of fallen off because sometimes you think, oh, they've had enough. But one thing I will say, that came out of this remarkable conference we just had was that the fact I need to do it more than anyone else does it. And so every person who's successful, and people say, well, Marky, should I reshare this content other places because someone told me not to? And I was like, well, I want you to think about Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola does not care that I'm going to see a Coca-Cola ad 20 times today, right? And I'm a loyal Coke fanatic, but they're going to push that ad time and time again, whether you're tired of it or not. And we can be our own Coca-Cola of the real estate world. So there's no such thing as you talking about what you do too much if you're providing relevant content. So every day we should lead generate. And I believe that as real estate professionals, for every $100,000 you want to earn, if your average price point is $250,000, you need to be adding 2,880 contacts to your customer relationship management system. That means everything that we just talked about, doing the live videos, going into the DM, providing resources and tools, we can now ask, because we've provided value, if they would like to be added to our customer relationship management system. And we can now follow up. So think of social media, technology, Facebook Live as lead generation. And we need to add 1 to 2 hours of this to our calendar every single day so that we can have, I interviewed, I can't think of his name right now. He said ether moments. So we want to have all these great ether moments because we're providing something of value.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
It couldn't be more. Matt, I thank you for your time, your energy, and your nuggets today. Once again, I got some homework to do, and I'm going to get this homework done. This is a lifestyle of homework, actually. We should probably talk about the homework of real estate. That's another show. But I thank you. I thank you for your time and energy today.
Thanks, Marky. I appreciate it.
Thank you.